The midday sun hung high above the training yard of Ridgefall Martial Academy, pouring bright, clear daylight over the polished floorboards that glowed like a quiet ocean of wood. Dozens of students practiced their drills with sharp discipline, each kick slicing through the air with precision. But all of them froze when the large, confident figure of 19-year-old black belt Ryder Cross stepped forward with a smirk on his face and pointed toward a gray-haired stranger who had just wandered in. The man was slight, his posture humble, his clothes loose from age, but his eyes, those tired, observant eyes, held a depth that no one paid attention to. Ryder chuckled loud enough for the entire academy to hear and said he wanted a friendly match with the old man, clearly meant as a joke. And everyone expected the old man to politely refuse or shuffle away. But what followed instead left the entire academy stunned, silent, and forever changed. If you believe in kindness, respect, and second chances, please like, comment, share, and subscribe to Kindly Tube to support stories that truly touch the heart. The old man's name was Eamon Vale, a 68-year-old who moved with the gentle rhythm of someone who had carried many years of life on his back. He had come only to watch, maybe ask about beginners' classes, or maybe simply feel the familiar scent of a training hall again. His fingers fidgeted unconsciously as he stared at the walls, decades since he had last stepped into a place like this. What no one knew was that Eamon had once been a respected soldier, a veteran who had survived battles tougher than anything the academy had ever taught. But life after service had not been kind. His injuries, both visible and hidden, had worn him down, taking away the physical strength he once relied on. Grief had taken even more. He had lost his wife 5 years earlier, and his daughter lived halfway across the world, barely calling anymore. The emptiness in his chest often grew louder than any sound. Today, he had simply walked into the academy because the old echoes of discipline comforted him. When Ryder mocked him and challenged him, Eamon had only smiled softly, not because he was amused, but because he recognized something painfully familiar: young arrogance, loud insecurity, and the kind of bravado that came from having earned skill but not yet wisdom. The younger students looked on as Ryder insisted the old man take the match. Their instructor, Master Heliobran, tried to defuse the situation, but Eamon gently raised a hand and asked if he may accept. His voice was calm, steady, respectful. And that, more than anything, caught Helio off guard. He nodded hesitantly. The match was set. Students formed a circle. Sunlight fell through wide windows, illuminating dust particles that floated between the two opponents like small drifting stars. Ryder cracked his knuckles, rolling his shoulders with a swagger that looked like it belonged in a movie rather than a dojo. Eamon simply bent forward, stretching slowly, wincing at the stiffness in his joints. The room was filled with snickers, nervous, excited, mean-spirited ones from Ryder's friends. When the signal to begin came, Ryder moved quickly, throwing a quick jab meant to test him. Eamon stepped aside so effortlessly it looked like a passing breeze had pushed him out of the punch's path. Ryder blinked, momentarily confused, then launched another strike, faster, sharper. Again, Eamon shifted, almost flowing around the attack without resistance. No aggression, no counterstrike, only calm movements. The room fell quieter with each failed punch. Ryder's face reddened. Then, in a single motion, Ryder went all in. He spun with a full roundhouse kick, a move he prided himself on, a move that had won him medals, tournaments, admiration. But Eamon did something no one saw coming. He stepped forward instead of backward, placed a single hand lightly on Ryder's hip, another on the boy's shoulder, and redirected him. Not threw him. Not struck him. Just turned his momentum. And Ryder collapsed onto the mat with a heavy thud, his breath rushing out of his lungs. The room went absolutely silent. Ryder scrambled up, embarrassed and furious, swinging at the old man again, this time recklessly. Yet Eamon did not attack. He simply guided, redirected, stepped aside, and allowed the boy's own aggression to defeat him. After several attempts, Ryder stumbled back, panting, sweat beading his forehead. Eamon's breathing was steady, though his chest rose a little more than before. Age always demanded its toll, but he kept his posture gentle and respectful. Master Helio stepped forward and ended the match himself, placing a hand on Eamon's shoulder, bowing before him. The students looked on, stunned and ashamed, realizing they had misjudged the quiet stranger entirely. Ryder lowered his gaze, cheeks burning. It wasn't the loss that hurt him, it was the realization of how he had treated someone who deserved respect. But the story didn't end at the shocking defeat. In fact, the real story, the emotional and transformative part, had only just begun. Eamon had never intended to humiliate the boy. As he walked to a bench, his legs trembling slightly from exertion, he gave Ryder a soft smile that was filled with something deeper, understanding. Ryder hesitated for a long time before finally walking over. His voice cracked as he apologized, not just for the match, but for mocking him in the first place. Eamon nodded, accepting the apology with kindness that felt undeserved. In the days that followed, Eamon visited the academy more often. Not to show off. Not to boast. But because Helio insisted he teach the students a few techniques: gentle discipline, situational awareness, how to use an opponent's energy rather than overpower them. As Eamon taught, a curious bond began to grow between him and Ryder. Ryder, who used to act invincible, started arriving early, sweeping the floors, preparing mats, and waiting for Eamon. And Eamon, who used to walk through life with a hollow loneliness weighing on his shoulders, suddenly found himself needed again more than he had been in years. Their training sessions were different from anything Ryder had experienced. They focused on breathing, posture, patience, humility. Ryder's frustration often boiled over, but Eamon never scolded him. Instead, he calmly explained how strength was meaningless without balance, and how battles were often lost long before a punch was thrown, lost in pride, lost in fear, lost in anger. Slowly, Ryder began to understand. Word spread through town that an elderly veteran was teaching at Ridgefall Academy, and parents began stopping by to thank him for his service. Some recognized him from older newspaper articles or community events. But Eamon had never wanted attention. He wanted purpose, something meaningful to wake up for each morning. Something to fill the empty dining table where he once shared laughter with the wife he lost far too early. But one afternoon changed everything for him in ways even he could not have predicted. Ryder's mother, Corinne Cross, visited the academy unexpectedly. She had tears in her eyes as she approached Eamon. Ryder, confused, watched as his mother hugged the old man tightly. Corinne had once worked as a nurse in the military hospital where Eamon had been treated decades ago. She remembered him, remembered the man who encouraged younger soldiers even when he himself was broken, who gave away his own wheelchair once he was strong enough to walk again, who always helped others even when he barely slept. She told Ryder, voice trembling, that this humble old man had been the reason many soldiers survived their darkest days. Hearing that shook Ryder's soul. For the first time in his life, he truly understood what kind of man stood in front of him. From that day forward, Ryder trained with new determination, not to win matches, but to become someone worthy of the values Eamon represented. And Eamon, seeing the sincerity in the boy's efforts, felt something warm in his chest that he hadn't felt in years, a sense of family in months past. Eamon became a beloved mentor at the academy, a figure whose wisdom shaped not just technique but character. Ryder transformed from an arrogant fighter into a humble leader, guiding younger students with patience he once lacked. Their bond became something people admired, a beautiful reminder that respect had no age and humility had no rank. But even as life blossomed again for Eamon, his health began to show signs of strain. His hands shook more often. His breathing grew shorter after long sessions. Master Helio insisted he take breaks. Ryder often walked him home, making sure he ate, making sure he rested. And Eamon, though grateful, knew his time of active teaching was slowly drawing to a close point. One bright daytime afternoon, during a small in-house ceremony, the academy honored Eamon with a handcrafted wooden plaque engraved with the words, "For strength beyond muscle, for courage beyond battle, for heart beyond age." Eamon's eyes filled with tears as he accepted it. He had never imagined that walking into a training hall one random morning would lead him back to meaning, belonging, and love. Near the end of the ceremony, Ryder stepped forward and bowed deeply, deeper than anyone else in the room. He thanked Eamon for teaching him not just martial arts, but life. He promised to carry his lessons forever and pass them down to others. Eamon, deeply moved, placed a gentle hand on the boy's shoulder and whispered that every generation must become better than the last. The room applauded, and Eamon realized that for the first time in years, his heart no longer felt hollow. It felt full, overflowing. Even. If this story touched your heart today, please like, comment, share, and subscribe to Kindly Tube so more people can experience inspiring stories like this.